Hello Exiles, Red Lord here, and let's get into what I personally think are the biggest W's and L's of the PoE2 Third Edict 0.3 patch. So let's get into it. Starting off with the W number 1, of course this one is obvious. I'm sure you heard this a million times from other content creators. It's asynchronous trade. From the 7 years of me playing Path of Exile, I think something around 7 years, I think this is by far the best, the biggest quality of life combined with the fun multiplier at the same time in a single package. It's just remarkable and pretty much no issues with it from the get-go. I love it. Nothing wrong I can say about it. Asynchronous trade is an obvious W. The next obvious one would most likely be sprinting, of course. And yeah, sprinting, at the beginning of the league I had a bit of a mixed feelings about it, but it turns out that most of it was actually skill issue. Yeah, they made some quality of life patches for the sprinting itself, and like for the maneuverability and for cancelling out sprint, because for example, you couldn't dodge roll while you're sprinting. Now you actually can just dodge roll while you're sprinting, and yeah, turns out that all I needed was some change like that. That really helps to, even if you get stuck on pebbles or all sorts of ground stuff, because the dodge roll itself actually has really good pathfinding. So even if you get stuck on something, you just dodge roll immediately and yeah, you're fine. So sprinting, obviously another big W. Alright, now we're getting into the more interesting stuff, and that is obviously crafting that came with the Third Edict. And overall, big W, big PogChamp, I love it. I love the crafting. However, there's in my opinion a couple issues with it. One issue being that it is so powerful that it just, in my opinion, sort of removes like the middle ground items, and by that I mean like the rare loot that drops on the ground. And yeah, but sometimes it actually helps a big amount, because sometimes you can drop a rare item on the ground that is pretty much halfway done, and you can easily and deterministically finish it with stuff like essences or like exalted orbs, perfect exalted orbs, homogenizing omen, all of that sorts of stuff. And yeah, I'm talking from experience. This is what happened to me, but overall, I feel like if the crafting is same or even similar to the state that it is in right now, I think GGG will need to compensate and make rare ground loot just better, roll better, maybe even give it some, I don't know, smart loot, like it's more likely to roll the like less weighting modifiers on items or something like that. I'm not a game designer, I have no idea honestly, but yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like rare items will need to pretty much get a buff if the crafting should stay the same. The other problem I have with crafting is it just makes it so easy to get those really juicy modifiers on items, and I'm obviously talking about stuff like plus skills on your weapons. Extremely easy to just slap on an essence, and especially if you combine the crafting with something like abyss crafting and then some of the omens like homogenizing omens, sorry, with exalted orbs. It makes it so easy to get the juicy modifiers like plus levels, and maybe it's actually not a crafting problem, I'm not sure, maybe it's more of a problem of some certain affixes just being extremely powerful on items. I think that's actually the problem, but I thought I would include it in the crafting. I think that some of the affixes on items, especially on weapons, just rare gear in general, needs to maybe be balanced and tuned down a bit, because it is, at this point, it is, in my opinion, quite extreme. Alright, the next W, in my opinion, would be skill tree clusters like these. In the mercenary area, it's momentum and light on feet. And yeah, especially momentum. If you didn't know, there actually is a movement speed penalty that you get from wearing a body armor and a shield. And of course, it has to scale with type of body armor and type of shield. That means that if you've got a armor-based body armor or armor-based shield, you're gonna get higher movement speed penalty than you would get with evasion or other stuff. And if you've got a armor-based body armor and a shield, the penalty is like minus 13 or 14 movement speed, something like that. A bit ridiculous, and I don't think it should exist in the first place, but at least we've got a way to mitigate it on the skill tree with clusters like these. But yeah, in my opinion, movement speed clusters like these in the warrior slash mercenary area, much needed and very much appreciated, and I love it. And talking about armor, the next W would be the Armour Buff, and by that I mean the modifier that says armor applies to elemental damage. I think it's spot on, it's really good, it feels good to have it, it feels good to stack it, and it is really effective, and you feel much more defensive if you have that stat. And yeah, the fact that you can somewhat get it on the skill tree, in a limited amount of course, but the fact that you can get it both on the skill tree and on your armor pieces just makes armor so much better, and I think that armor now is, I would even say, really good. I do genuinely think armor is now really good, and yeah, hopefully not gonna get nerfed. Next W in my opinion would be the more exciting ground loot, and by that I mean the addition of different kinds of currencies like greater chaos orbs, perfect chaos orbs, perfect exalted orbs. All of that just adds on, and there's just more exciting stuff in terms of at least currency that can drop other than just a divine orb, right? And not just in terms of currencies, but also the addition of exceptional bases. I love that. I love the addition of exceptional bases. It just straight up enabled completely new farm to PoE, and that is just like, yeah, pretty much base item farming, trying to farm normal items and hope you get the exceptional bases. And yeah, even just as a random drop that occasionally happens, I love the idea of exceptional bases and getting more exciting ground loot. And for the final W, in my opinion, it would be the one that came a bit later in the league, but came with the patch 0.31, and that is Tower and Tablets rework. I love it. I personally think it's a great W, great addition, and I'm really glad that I actually added it during the league and didn't wait for the next league, because this literally made my league much more enjoyable and I was able to play for a longer amount of time. And yeah, I love the change, even though it sort of nerfed the high end. Yeah, now it just doesn't matter. You can just juice wherever you want, whenever you want. It's completely up to you, and I love that. Now we're getting into the ones that I would say I have a mixed feelings about. First one being Lineage Gems. I really was excited when I saw in the announcement of this league that there's gonna be something like Lineage Gems, and the fact that they're gonna be more build enabling and interesting. I really thought that they're gonna be super exciting drops, and I guess I like the Lineage Gems, don't get me wrong. I like the concept of Lineage Gems. I don't think I really like stuff like Rakiata's Flow, because that's just, I don't know, it feels good to play with it, right? Don't get me wrong, it feels really good, but it feels kind of like just something that is not that much interesting. It's just a damage multiplier, right? And yeah, that's how I would describe it. But other stuff like the Kaom's Madness, for example, giving you more fissures for skills, that's what I want, that's what I like. But yeah, obviously some of them are pretty unbalanced. Atalui's Bloodletting and Rakiata's Flow. But I guess what I don't like about them is the implementation, I suppose. I really thought that majority of them is gonna be locked behind a boss, which honestly some of the good ones are, like Atalui's Bloodletting or Rakiata's, they're locked behind bosses. Yeah, but other ones are, I would say, a bit unimpressive, maybe even useless, most of them, and they drop like candies. It's if you see them, it's nothing. I really thought, I was expecting for them to be really powerful, really just build enabling, build defining items, and yeah, not dropping like candy. Bit of a mixed feelings about them. Alright, the next one I have mixed feelings about is actually Abyss. I know this is gonna be, I would say, quite an unpopular opinion, but don't get me wrong, I love the Abyss crafting. That is, I would say, top notch. I love it. However, the implementation of Abyss, I love it. I love the functionality of it compared to the PoE 1 Abyss. I just love it. It is straight up better. But I'm not sure if something like Abyss actually fits into PoE 1 because, like, the current implementation of it. Because, yeah, most of you maybe didn't even run into that issue, but if you're playing melee, you know what I'm talking about. Just playing against Abyss on a melee, especially at the beginning of this league. The visual clarity and just the fact that in a game where it's supposed to be more clear what you're doing and more based around visual clarity and having good visual clarity, something like Abyss that just straight up shits out hundreds of monsters with all of these different effects, and especially the green on green ground effects and all of that stuff, I'm not sure if it fits into the game. And yeah, twice that if you're playing melee, of course. But overall, I like it more than I don't like it. So yeah, that's why it's a bit of a mixed feeling for me. Alright, now we're getting into the inevitable, the else of the Third Edict patch. And I gotta start with it because it's been terrible for me for the whole league. It's been performance and visual clarity. Both of them just suck this league, in my opinion. And yeah, let's first get into the performance. For me, perfect example would actually be the warrior build that I played. I was playing with Volcanic Fissure and proccing aftershocks of Volcanic Fissure a lot. Fire skills just destroy your frames, and shattering with cold skills or just straight up shattering also destroys your frames. Perfect example would be the Volcanic Fissure. From stable, like, I don't know, 90, 100 frames in my hideout, pressing Volcanic Fissure once put me to like 70 frames from 90. And if I actually put the maximum fissures, which is 8 that I had on my build, and started proccing aftershocks, I dropped to best frames that I had while proccing aftershocks from Volcanic Fissure was like 45 frames in hideout with nothing else, no map, no additional effects, just in hideout, 45 frames. During mapping, fighting map bosses, it usually was like 26, 27 frames while actually fighting bosses. And yeah, that's just terrible. That needs to get fixed. Hopefully, I know I don't have the best PC, definitely not, but this is ridiculous, and I actually enjoyed so much playing the last build that I played, where I was just basically using Bone Storm, Essence Drain, and the Palm of the Dreamer for the explosions. Those explosions are good for your frames, they don't tank really much, and I enjoyed playing most of the time on the 60 frames, and I love that. But yes, definitely performance needs to be balanced, needs to be better, because this is ridiculous. And talking about the performance and visual clarity, perfect example again would be the same build, the Volcanic Fissure. The best way to explain that is to actually show you the post that I made. It's this right here. Yeah, I mean, it speaks for itself, right? Volcanic Fissures, this is, by the way, 8 fissures. This is the maximum, and I had totems and the Warbringer Ascendancy spirits. And yeah, I dare you to find Count Janor. He's not there. He's just disappeared. I have no idea what the boss is doing. I don't even have an idea where the boss is, even when it's paused like that. I have no idea. I could roughly guess that he's somewhere around here, between all the totems and all of that, because he was actually probably targeting the totems. But I have no idea what move the boss is doing. I don't even have an idea if the boss is in the wolf version, if it's in the second phase, or if it's in the first phase. Completely just visual clarity, boom, out of the window, completely. And that is a really big problem when that's happening even on bosses, not just mapping, with stuff like Delirium and skills that, I don't know, shit out incredible amounts of projectiles. It's not happening just there, but with some skills like Volcanic Fissure, it's happening even on bosses. And then I guess there's a big problem and something needs to be done about that, because this just, I would say, incentivizes the one-shot the boss playstyle, because you don't even have an idea what it does, so you cannot dodge it. So it's just better to build fall into damage and one-shot it before it does anything, right? And I hate that. The next L, in my opinion, would be again about gear, and that is that gear gives us too much power. I actually believe that gear just gives us way too much power, especially rare gear, even like mediocre rare gear, just gives you way too much power. And it is not just about you requiring to have pretty much the same modifiers as everyone else has on items. It is just removing the possibility of actually playing with like some interesting unique items, because yeah, I know there's stuff like the Last Lament build, and that is actually pretty damn good, but yeah, I really do feel like the current game, especially with the recent changes to bosses, I think the current game actually is like balanced, especially the bosses are balanced more around the power that rare item gives you. And then if you actually try and play a build with a unique, you hit a brick wall, because yeah, I feel like the bosses are balanced more around the power we get from rare items. And yeah, just unique items are usually, especially weapons, are just usually a league behind, because they straight up don't have skill levels, and just that alone makes them shit. And I don't really like that. I don't really like that, because there actually is a couple of interesting weapons in the game that I think are good and super interesting build enabling, but no one even bothers to play with them because, for example, they don't have skill levels. And yeah, that just sucks. And the last L of the Third Edict League, for me personally, would be the Deadeye problem. And I'm probably getting wrecked in the comments. I'm gonna be of an unpopular opinion. I don't actually think it's all about Deadeye. I actually think it's combination of problems put into one, simplified into just everyone playing Deadeye. I think it's combination of Deadeye ascendancy, the starting location, content creators, rare items, and players actually growing more into sheep than, I would say, explorers. The 7 or 6 years ago when I was starting to play PoE, of course there was lots of like meta builds that most of the people were following and playing, but I feel like back in the day, or yeah, 7 years ago, not that long ago, players were actually exploring much more than they do right now. And it is just weird to me that people just don't want to explore and don't want to try other stuff, even if they would know it would be worse than Deadeye Lightning Arrow or something like that. Players just, I think, don't want to explore anymore, and I'm not sure why. Luckily, I'm not one of them, even though I made my own Deadeye build this league. Of course, it was the last build that I was playing, so I'm not like wholly someone that is never gonna play Deadeye. Definitely not. But yeah, I think it's just plethora of different problems piled into one, and that is Deadeye. Just thinking about the starting ascendancy of Deadeye, or the Ranger ascendancy, or Huntress and Amazon, or a Huntress, sorry, is just in that starting location, you're getting so much good stuff. Right off the bat, you can get like +6, +8 movement speed. You get lots of different evasion bonuses. You get so much movement speed right off the bat. Then you multiply it by the tailwind you get from a Deadeye. Just fixes all your movement speed, and with stuff like row amount, I mean, come on, right? And then if you take into consideration the fact that stuff like Lightning Arrow or the bow builds usually, not saying every time, but usually don't even want to use stuff like unique items. They're just more based around rare items, and objectively rare items are just currently way better than most of the unique items, unless the unique item is just straight up build enabling. They're usually better, right? And on rare items you can actually get stuff like rarity, and rarity is a loot multiplier, as well as movement speed. You can think of it as a loot multiplier because you're moving faster, you're looting faster, you're going through maps faster, which means you're getting more per hour, right? And people in these games obviously want to make the most currency per hour, right? And you cannot really blame players for deciding to go this way, right? Because most of the players don't want to play something that is objectively worse just to be hipster or something. I guess I'm different. I like to play hipster builds. I like to play something completely different than everyone else is playing, but not everyone else is gonna enjoy the game the same way that I do, right? And that makes for majority of the player base actually playing one ascendancy or something. And yeah, it's not just about the ascendancy, as I said in my opinion, it's the combination, I'm gonna repeat it again, the combination of ascendancy, class starting location, content creators, rare items problem, and the actual players being more of a sheep lately than like explorers of new stuff and possibilities. And yeah, I don't want to blame the players entirely, but I think my personal opinion is that especially when it's in early access, we should be exploring other stuff and not going with the mindset, okay, this is the best thing and I'm gonna do the best thing again and again and again. That's my opinion. I cannot just blame other players for deciding that they want to play the game differently. As I said, my opinion, I feel like that, and yeah, I don't really want to blame just GGG for the Deadeye and like this balance problem. I think players and content creators actually have a big part to play in it. Alright, there you have it. These are my W's and L's of the league. Be sure to tell me what you think in the comments. And yeah, thank you very much for making it this far into the video, and see you in the next one.